Welcome to Double Portion Inheritance with Maria Merola and Gary Wold, brought to you by DoublePortionInheritance.com. Since 1981, Maria heard the call of Yahuwah to become a watchman to the house of Yisrael and to those within the traditional Christian church. She was instructed to warn them against the false doctrines and pagan traditions of men. After 25 years of studying Scripture, the word of Yahuwah came to Maria again in 2007 as she was called out of the corporate world to become a full-time intercessor and prophetic teacher. The name of the ministry, Double Portion Inheritance, was given to her after she received the revelation of the two houses of Yisrael from Ezekiel 37:16. The mission of this ministry is to bring together the stick of Judah and the stick of Joseph for the return of the Messiah, Yahushua. And now, Maria Merola.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Today is August 28th, 2021, and we are doing part 3 of 7 Skinny Cows Become 7 Fat Cows, the fullness of the Gentiles. What's funny is I had a guy yesterday, I posted this invitation to this podcast in one of the Facebook groups, and this guy doesn't understand the metaphor, and he's like, 7 skinny cows don't become 7 fat cows. 7 skinny cows swallow 7 fat cows. They don't become 7 fat cows. And I responded, you don't get the metaphor. Just read the blog before jumping to any false conclusions. So anyway, so 7 skinny cows become 7 fat cows. I talked about how in the year 2007, Yahuwah began to work this into me, and I began to understand the bigger picture of Pharaoh's dreams and how they pertain to the end times. And, I talk about what the word cow represents, the two sisters, the two wives of Jacob. There's Leah and Rachel, and they are both sister rivals. They both are married to the same man, and they compete for his affection. But they represent the two houses of Israel, Jews and Gentiles, right? Rachel represents the Jews because she had fewer children. Leah represents the Gentiles because she had many children, and the Gentiles are more abundant, and they are more fruitful, and they have way more people that they've preached the gospel to in the nations. And, Leah's name means weak-eyed, okay, because she wasn't that beautiful to look upon. But her name also means a wild cow, okay? And people don't believe me, but there's a link you can go to and see for yourself. Leah's name means wild cow. It means weak-eyed because she was not that beautiful to the eye. Rachel was more beautiful, and Jacob loved her because she was outwardly beautiful. And isn't that like the way it really is with the Jewish people? They're outwardly beautiful. They do the Torah outwardly so we can see it with our eyes, and we see them wearing the tzitzits, and we see them, doing all the outward things that appeals to our Creator. But they're missing something. They're not filled with the Ruach, the ones that have not accepted Yahushua as the Messiah. They're not filled with his Ruach. I mean, I'm not saying they don't have a measure of the Spirit. Obviously, they have some revelation, but we can't be filled with the Ruach HaKodesh unless we've been atoned for by the blood of the Lamb. And so they are missing the inward beauty. Whereas on the born-again believers in the nations that are called Christians, who are now starting to come into Torah observance in the last 20 years, many Gentiles are coming into Torah observance, and they're leaving behind the traditions of men. They're leaving behind mystery Babylon religion, and they are coming into the Torah, and they represent Leah, because Leah, although she wasn't beautiful outwardly, and Jacob was not initially attracted to her, Leah turned out to be the better wife. She turned out to be the more faithful bride. Rachel was hiding her idols. She was putting her trust in man-made things, just like in Judaism, they put their trust in man-made traditions. And Rachel was putting her trust in these idols of her father because she envied her sister Leah so much that her sister was so fruitful, and Yahuwah blessed her with more children, compensated her because she wasn't loved by her husband. So he blessed her with more children. And Rachel was so jealous of that. And aren't we supposed to provoke the house of Judah to jealousy? Well, Leah did. She provoked Rachel to jealousy. And when Rachel died young, giving birth to Benjamin, she named him Benoni, which means son of my sorrow. I truly believe that Rachel repented on her deathbed. She knew she was wrong. And the reason she named her son Benoni is because she repented, I believe. But Jacob renamed him Benjamin, which means son of my right hand. And, you see in the last days, the two sons of Joseph that represent Manasseh and Ephraim. These two sons of Joseph, Jacob put his hands on their heads. And what did he do? He crossed his hands over. He switched his hands. He put the right hand on the younger son's head, and he put the left hand on the older son's head. Why did he do this? He did this because Jacob understood something. He was the twin. He was a twin in the womb. His older brother was Esau, and he was only minutes younger, just a few minutes younger. And yet Esau was scheduled to inherit everything. And it didn't seem fair that the older brother gets everything and the younger brother gets nothing. And yet it was prophesied to his mother, Rebekah. She said, the older shall serve the younger. So Jacob comes out of the womb grabbing his brother's heel. And that was a prophetic sign because it was told to Rebekah that, two nations are in your womb. And so Jacob ended up, although he went about it the wrong way, he tricked his father and pretended to be Esau. And he went about it the wrong way, but yet the prophecy still came true, where he became the inheritor. And he says, Jacob I have loved and Esau I have hated. Well, it doesn't seem right that Yahuwah would hate Esau, but love Jacob. But some people think that doesn't seem fair. Well, the reason why he loved Esau, hated Esau and loved Jacob is because Jacob was after the things of heaven. He pursued the things of the kingdom. He pursued heavenly things, spiritual things, whereas Esau only cared about the here and the now. He was willing to give up his inheritance for a bowl of stew. And so what we learn from that story is that we are to set our sights on things that are from above. That we are not to be carnally minded, because to be carnally minded is death. So Jacob understood this principle, having been through it himself. He learned that the first shall be last and the last shall be first. This is a principle taught throughout the Gospels. Our Messiah reiterated this principle. He says, whoever shall exalt himself shall be humbled or abased, and whoever shall humble himself shall be exalted. So Jacob, understanding these principles, gave the blessing of the firstborn to the younger son, Ephraim, whose name means double fruit. And what did he say to Ephraim? He said, he shall become a multitude of nations. And what did he say to Manasseh? He said, he too shall be a great nation. Okay. So Manasseh means causing to forget. Okay. And the thing that's interesting is Manasseh typifies the house of Judah, because the kingdom of Judah, after they crucified their own Messiah, 40 years later, the Romans came in, destroyed their temple, and they became exiled. They were all but forgotten for many years. They were all but forgotten. At least it seemed that way. But what did Yahuwah say in the scriptures? He says, I have not forgotten you, Israel. See, I have engraved you in the palm of my hand. Okay? But the thing that's interesting is that the kingdom of Judah, they have caused the nations to forget his name. I mean, he says in the scriptures, he says, you have caused my people to forget my name. And that's exactly what the house of Judah did in the Babylonian captivity. See, find the scripture. Forget my name. When the Jewish people went into the Babylonian captivity, they outlawed the sacred name of the Father. Right here in Jeremiah 23:27, he says, which think to cause my people to forget my name by their dreams, which they tell every man to his neighbor, as their fathers have forgotten my name for Baal. Okay. Jeremiah was specifically talking to the kingdom of Judah. He wasn't talking about the other 10 tribes. He was talking specifically to the house of Judah. He says, how long shall this be in the heart of the prophets that prophesy lies? Yea, they are prophets of the deceit of their own heart, which think to cause my people to forget my name by their dreams, which they tell every man to his neighbor, as their fathers have forgotten my name for Baal. The prophet that has a dream, let him tell a dream, and he that has my word, let him speak my word faithfully. What is the chaff to the wheat, says Yahuwah. See, he's actually talking about the wheat and the chaff, and it's all going to be determined on what? Those that have the revelation of his name. That's so important. So Manasseh, he becomes a great nation, but even as a great nation, he was forgotten for a time until 1948. Yahuwah ended the captivity of the house of Judah. And what does it say? And I know a lot of people, I've had this argument with people this past week. They say, oh, the Jews, they're nothing but Zionists. You know what? Yahuwah always has a remnant. I don't care how much the Jewish people have been in deception. Yahuwah has a remnant. Scripture tells us that he has a remnant. I'm trying to find a picture. Okay, here in Jeremiah 3:18, it says, in those days, the house of Yehudah, that's, Judah's name, has the father's name in it. Inside of the father's name is the Dalet. The Dalet means the door. Okay, so the name Judah is the father's name Yahuwah with the Dalet, the door, in the middle. So in those days, the house of Yehudah shall go to the house of Israel, and they shall come together out of the land of the north to the land that I have given as an inheritance to your fathers. Jeremiah 16:15, but Yahuwah lives, who brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north and from all the lands where he had driven them. For I shall bring them back into their own land I gave to their fathers. And also Jeremiah 23:8, but as Yahuwah lives, who brought up and led the seed of the house of Israel out of the land of the north and from all the lands where I had driven them, and they shall dwell in their own soil. So there's people that say, oh, the modern state of Israel is not the true Israel. They say it's been built by Zionists. You know what? Yahuwah says in his word, in the book of Proverbs, he says, I have laid up the wealth of the wicked to redeem the just. Okay, so if he wants to use the wealth of the Rothschild family, if he wants to use the wealth of the Rockefellers and the Bilderbergs and all these Zionists to bring the people back into their own land, why did he bring the Jewish people back to the land of Israel, even the ones that have not accepted Yahushua as of yet? Because when he brings them back into their own land, what would happen to the Gentiles? The Gentiles would become enriched by this event. In 1948, the whole world watched as a miraculous thing happened. Nobody ever thought it could be done. But in Isaiah 66, it says that a nation shall be born in one day. In one day. It's right here, Isaiah 66. It says, who has heard such a thing? Who has seen such things? Shall the earth be made to bring forth in one day? Or shall a nation be born at once? For as soon as Zion travailed, she brought forth her children. Shall I bring to the birth and not cause to bring forth? Says Yahuwah, shall I cause to bring forth and shut the womb? says your Elohim. So there's people that say, oh, the modern state of Israel is not the true Israel. It was founded on, it was financially built by the Zionists. Who cares? Yeah, Yahuwah can use the wealth of the wicked if he wants to, right? He has to set the stage for the return of the Messiah. And in order to do that, they have to be able to meet him at the Mount of Olives. So Scripture doesn't say that Yahushua was going to return to Palestine. No, 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 no. It says he's going to return to the Mount of Olives in where? Jerusalem. Well, even though I believe that President Trump is an anti-Messiah, that, he's only pretending to be pro-Israel, but he's mandated vaccines I shouldn't have said that word. Gary's going to have to cut that word out. Otherwise, YouTube's going to take my video down. But he's mandated the snake bites, okay? And all these people are dying left and right over there. But he made Jerusalem the capital city, okay, of Israel. So Yahuwah uses the wicked to do his bidding, right? And so Yahuwah did bring the house of Judah back to their own land, just as he prophesied in the book of Jeremiah. And the Gentiles see this in the nations, and they say, see, Yahuwah has not forgotten the house of Judah. And now, because of this, many Gentiles came back to the Torah. Face it, if this had not happened in 1948, the Gentiles would not have come back to the Torah. You know it, and I know it. The reason why so many Gentiles came into Torah obedience, is because they saw with their own eyes prophecy coming to pass. Okay? So don't tell me that the modern state of Israel is not the true Israel. Yes, of course, there's 10 more tribes out there in the nations. We know this. But we know that he brought the kingdom of Judah back to their own land. It even says in Scripture, because I get so mad when people say this. They say, oh, that's not the true Israel. Okay? There's another prophecy about Judah specifically. Okay? Jeremiah 3:18. In those days, the house of Yehudah shall walk with the house of Israel, and they shall come together out of the land of the north to the land that I have given for an inheritance to your fathers. So don't tell me Yahuwah doesn't still have a plan for the kingdom of Judah, because he does. He still does. He always has a remnant. Okay? So, we talked last week about the two sister harlots that are divided over the male heir, and how Solomon tested these two sister harlots. In Ezekiel 23, the two sister harlots are named as Jerusalem and Samaria. Jerusalem was the capital city of the kingdom of Judah, and Samaria was the capital city over the house of Ephraim, the kingdom of the 10 northern tribes of the house of Ephraim. So he tested these two harlots by pretending he was going to slice the baby in half. But he didn't slice the baby in half. It was a test, okay? But Solomon's kingdom got divided later on because of his harlotry with all these heathen wives. He built temples for these heathen wives. So the two kingdoms split. They became the two southern tribes of the house of Judah, and the 10 northern tribes of the house of Ephraim. Okay? And then I talk about Ephraim's apostasy, how they got into Baal worship, and how he tells them in Amos, I despise your feast days. He's talking about Christian holidays that are so-called Christian holidays that are really pagan holidays from ancient Babylon. Okay, and we talked about that last week. We talked about how Yahuwah promised to bring Israel back, backsliding Israel. And there's a picture of Hosea, and he's embracing his wife Gomer. Just a prophetic picture of how Yahuwah is going to bring back Israel. And, we talked about, see here. Talked about the meaning behind the name of Leah and Rachel, and how Rachel symbolizes the beautiful fat cows, and Leah represents the skinny, sickly, unattractive cows. But the tables turn. After Jacob marries these two women, Leah turns out to be more beautiful wife inwardly because she's faithful. And Yahuwah blesses her with many children. And Rachel dies young, giving birth to Benjamin. And at first she's barren. She doesn't give birth right away. Okay? So we know that the picture of the 7 healthy and beautiful cows starts out with Rachel, but later on she becomes like the skinny and unhealthy cows and unattractive cows. The tables turn. Okay, and we talked about that last week. Talked about the prodigal son, how he started out as the rebellious son who squandered the inheritance, but he comes back and he's repentant. And when he's repentant, the father accepts him back and gives him a second inheritance, a double portion. Just like Joseph received a double portion when his father Jacob came to Goshen, he gave Joseph a double portion of all that he had. And the older brother said, "That's not fair. He squandered the first inheritance on harlots and drunkenness, and now he gets a second inheritance. It's not fair." And I understand, to the human understanding, it doesn't seem fair. But you see, this is the fullness of the Gentiles. The father did not like the attitude of the older brother. He said, "This is my son who I thought was dead. You should be rejoicing with me that he's alive now." And now I see Hebrew roots people and Christian people doing the same thing with Judah, with their long lost brother Judah. They're treating those in the kingdom of Judah, those in the modern state of Israel, they're saying, "Oh, they're not, they're lost. It's too late for them. They're nothing but Zionists." That's a wrong attitude. The same attitude that the house of Judah had towards the Samaritans the first time our Messiah was here is the same attitude that now the Gentile believers are adopting in the nations towards the kingdom of Judah. Now the older brother is no longer Judah. The older brother is the house of Ephraim. We've grown in abundance in the nations. We have been, bursting out at the seams. There's so many people in the nations that believe in our Messiah, Yahushua, and they obey the Torah now. They've started keeping the feast days. They've started keeping Shabbat. But what are they doing? They're speaking evil of the house of Judah, and they're saying, "Oh, they're not the real, those are fake Jews." And I hate it when I hear people quote that passage of scripture in Revelation where they say, "Oh, I know them that say that they are Jews, but they are not. They are the synagogue of Satan." Look, it's not up to you to decide who's who. The Father knows who's who. The Father knows that he has a remnant in the kingdom of Judah that belong to him. In fact, did you know that in 1948 there was only 1,000 Messianic Jews? And now, in today's statistics, this comes from One for Israel Ministries, 50,000 Jews in the nation now. 50,000. Okay, so remember when Yahuwah was about to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah? And remember what Abraham said? He said, "Will you destroy Sodom and Gomorrah if there's even 50 righteous men?" He said, "No, I will not." And then Abraham keeps lowering the number. He said, "How about if there's only 30 righteous men or 20 righteous men or 10 righteous men? How about if there's only 5 righteous men?" And he says, "Even for 5, I will not destroy Sodom and Gomorrah." How much more will he not destroy all the remnant of Israel? He has a remnant. So be careful what you say with your lips about the kingdom of Judah, because you will be held accountable if you speak curses over his remnant. Okay, because only the Father knows who's who. And I'm so tired of hearing people say this because it's so wrong. Yahuwah has a remnant in the kingdom of Judah. And this is where we left off last week with this picture of the olive tree. Beautiful picture painted by my favorite artist, Larissa Lando. She's a messianic artist, and she's depicting Zechariah chapter 4. The two olive trees represent the two houses of Israel, the kingdom of Judah, the kingdom of Ephraim. And the olives from these two trees is poured into this cup, and the cup feeds the seven-branched menorah, which are the seven assemblies in the book of Revelation. So, you know what? What did Paul the Apostle Shaul say? He says, do not boast against the branches, because without them, you don't have any anointing. You don't have any olive oil to light your lamps with. Your olive oil that lights your lamp comes from these two olive trees. So don't you dare boast against the branches. Don't you dare. Okay? So I love it when he says, for I would not, brethren, that you should not be ignorant of this mystery, lest you be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. So in Romans 11:17-21, Paul uses a metaphor of the natural branches to describe the original branches of the olive tree, Israel, who were abiding in the vine being Messiah. But Paul uses the wild branches as a metaphor of the branches that were not of the olive tree, Israel, yet they were grafted into the tree when they had faith in Messiah. These two branches are symbolized by the two sides of the menorah. The middle branch of the menorah represents Messiah. He told us that he is the main vine of the tree and his followers are his branches. John 15:5. Three of the branches of the menorah on the right represent the house of Judah, the natural branches. And the other three on the left represent the house of Ephraim, the wild branches. There are a total of 6 branches, and they are both connected to the main branch of the trunk of the tree, which is Messiah, the 7th branch. You see, at creation, Yahuwah created mankind on day number 6. Hence, it is prophetically fitting that there are 6 branches on a menorah attached to the middle or the 7th branch. In Zechariah 4:2, we are shown that the 2 olive trees, symbolic of Judah and Ephraim, give oil to the 7-branched menorah, symbolic of the 7 congregations in Revelation. Yahushua even explained this mystery in Revelation 1:20. He said that the 7 golden candlesticks are the 7 assemblies. This brings us to the 7 feasts of Israel. We are commanded to keep these feasts forever. He didn't say only until Messiah dies on the cross. He said forever, unto all generations, in all your dwellings. The 7-branch menorah in the temple had to be filled daily with olive oil in order to keep it burning, thus creating light. The menorah is deliberately made to look like a tree. When all 7 branches of the menorah are filled with olive oil, this means that all 7 assemblies in the book of Revelation will be ready to meet the bridegroom. This is precisely why Yahushua fulfilled all 7 feasts at his first coming for the 7 skinny cows who represent the ill-favored, the weak, the sickly, and malnourished. What did he say to the Pharisees? He says, I've not come for those that are well, I've come for those that are sick. Okay? And why were they malnourished? It's because they were not allowed to come near the temple to hear the Torah and the prophets. You see, the house of Judah set up a wall. They put up a wall around the temple that prevented the lost sheep from coming near. They built up a wall around the outer court, and if any Gentile wanted to come near the temple to hear the word being preached, they would be stoned to death. And this is why the Apostle Shaul or Paul wrote in Colossians 2:14, he says, blotting out the ordinances that were against us. See, people think this is talking about the law of Moses. They think, Christians read this and they see, oh, see, Messiah blotted out the law of Moses. That's not what he's talking about. The word ordinances has to do with man-made traditions. Okay. In Ephesians 2:14, he said that he came to break down that middle wall of partition that divided the two kingdoms, the house of Ephraim from the house of Yehudah. He says that Yahushua abolished in his flesh the enmity. What does the word enmity mean? Hatred. He came to abolish the enmity between these two houses of Israel, the Jews and the Gentiles. At his second coming, Yahushua will also fulfill the 7 feasts again, just like Jacob, who worked an additional 7 years for Rachel, just as she typifies the house of Judah. In the same way that Joseph, Yehusaph, fulfilled 7 years of famine for the skinny cows, Messiah fulfilled 7 feasts at his first coming for the lost sheep. But Messiah will also fulfill 7 feasts again for the 7 fat cows when he returns, which is the house of Judah. You see, in the last days, there's going to be a reversal of roles again. The 7 sickly, unsightly cows will become fat and beautiful. Okay. In Revelation 19:10, it says that the testimony of Yahushua is the spirit of prophecy. The 7 feasts are his testimony. Okay. Because a lot of Christians love to quote that verse, they say the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. Well, do you know what that means? The 7 feasts are his testimony. So if you're not into his 7 feasts, then guess what? You don't have his testimony. Okay? Pesach, Passover, the death of Yahushua Messiah on the tree as our Passover lamb. Feast of Unleavened Bread. Hag Matzah, the burial of Yahushua Messiah. First fruits, Yom HaBikurim in Hebrew. Yahushua's true resurrection day. It says he went into the lowest parts of the earth and gave gifts unto men. He presented these first fruits offerings to the Father in heaven. The souls of these people that were in Abraham's bosom, that pre-crucifixion saints, they were in Abraham's bosom or paradise. They were in a temporary holding place. He brought them before the Father in heaven and presented them as his first fruits offering. Feast of Weeks, Shabuot or Pentecost. Yahushua baptized his followers with the Ruach HaKodesh and fire. He promised he would do this. Feast of Trumpets. He was born on the Feast of Trumpets, Yom Teruah. Okay, that's for another teaching. My whole blog about his birth is here. When was the Messiah of Israel born? And I show lots of evidence that he was born on the Feast of Trumpets, not on Sukkot. Okay. Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. Yahushua was circumcised as an infant on Yom Kippur on the evening of the 9th day of Tishri. This is 8 days after his birth. He was born at the evening of the first of Tishri, going into the 2nd day of Tishri. This means 8 days later was the beginning of Yom Kippur, the 9th day of Tishri. You see, what happens when a baby boy gets circumcised is his blood is sprinkled. Well, that was a foreshadowing of Isaiah 52:15. It says, he shall sprinkle many nations. Okay, Yahushua sprinkled many nations with his blood. Also, the beginning of his ministry at the age of 30 years old, after he came out of the 40-day fast, what did he do? After his testing in the wilderness, he went into the synagogue and read Isaiah 61. He declared himself to be the Mashiach, the anointed one. He also proclaimed the acceptable year of Yahuwah. Only the high priest is allowed to declare the acceptable year. According to Numbers chapter 10:2, the sons of Aaron were supposed to blow the silver trumpets every year. Every time it's a Jubilee year, they were supposed to declare it with these silver trumpets. But Messiah now was declaring the acceptable year. And that they recognize that he's from the house of Judah and he's acting as the high priest, which is Melchizedek, because it says in Hebrews 7:14 that Melchizedek sprang out of Judah, which tribe Moses never spoke anything about. So you can understand why when he read Isaiah 61, in the synagogue, they all looked at him like deer in the headlights. They were like, what? He's calling himself the high priest and he's from the house of Judah, not from the house of Levi? You see, that's why John the Baptist had to die, because when he baptized our Messiah, he transferred the role of the high priest back to Melchizedek again. Okay? See, our Messiah for him to be announcing the acceptable year as one from the tribe of Yehuda, not from Levi, the people had to be astonished. He was clearly showing them the office of the Kohen Hagadol, the high priest, was being restored back to the order of Melchizedek. That's king of righteousness. Like I said, Hebrews 7:14 says that Melchizedek sprang out of Judah. Okay? And did it ever occur to you that the kingdom of Judah existed in eternity before Jacob and Leah gave birth to their fourth son named Judah? Did it ever occur to you that in eternity, the 12 gates to the New Jerusalem already existed? That the New Jerusalem, even though we call it new, it's not new in eternity. It's always existed. It's always been. It's just that it's going to be new for us because we're so used to the earthly things that when the new heaven and the new earth comes down, for us it's going to be brand new. But in eternity, the New Jerusalem has always existed. Okay? Yeah. He also became the sacrificial goat at his baptism, because baptism is a symbol of death. Romans 6:3-4. Okay? And something that came to me is just now, like in Genesis 14, when Melchizedek came to Abraham, it says that Melchizedek was the king of Salem, okay, which is an ancient name for Jerusalem. There was no Jerusalem back then. There was no earthly Jerusalem back then. So this is obviously talking about Melchizedek, who came from heaven, the heavenly Jerusalem, okay? He also, Messiah became a sacrificial goat, the Yom Kippur sacrificial goat at his baptism, because baptism is a symbol of death. We learn that in Romans 6:3-4. But he also fulfilled the pattern of the scapegoat by taking away sin into the wilderness for 40 days, never to return. In other words, as far as the east is from the west, for those who repent. When he emerged from the wilderness, he then acted as our high priest when he read the prophecy of Isaiah 61, thus declaring that he was now our kinsman redeemer and our high priest after the order of Melchizedek. Luke 4:18-21. See, Yom Kippur is the only feast that Yahushua will fulfill twice at his first coming. He first fulfilled it at his circumcision as an infant, and then again at the beginning of his ministry as Melchizedek, when he emerged from his 40-day fast in the wilderness. Why did he do the feast twice? You see, at his circumcision, he fulfilled Yom Kippur as an infant when he was circumcised, and then when he began his ministry, he fulfilled Yom Kippur again as he was entering into his role as Melchizedek, the high priest. Well, he did it twice because why? For twin goats. The two twin goats of the twin goats of Yom Kippur symbolizes the house of Israel and the house of Judah. Okay? The Feast of Tabernacles. You see, Yahushua dwelled in a sukkah with his parents during this 7-day feast, shortly after his birth. 14 days after he was born, he dwelled in the sukkah with his parents. And then weekly Sabbath. Yahushua resurrected on Saturday night just before the sun went down, just before the first day of the week. He was 3 days and 3 nights after his Wednesday Passover crucifixion. In other words, he died in the midst of the week, according to Daniel 9:27. He died in the middle of the last 7 years of Daniel's prophecy, the 490-year prophecy. The last 7 years of that prophecy, he died in the middle of that, which was 3.5 years. But also he died in the middle of the literal Passover week, which we know today is Wednesday. Okay? So this is why he declared, I am master of the Sabbath. Yahushua will fulfill the Sabbath millennium in the 6,000th year from creation, thus taking us into the 7th millennium. This will be 1,000 years of rest from the devil, as he will be chained up in the bottomless pit during this time. In 2 Peter 3:8, we are told that one day is like 1,000 years with Yahuwah. Okay, and in this blog called When Was the Real Messiah Born and Why Does It Matter, I give undeniable proof that our Messiah was not born on the Feast of Tabernacles, as traditionally taught by Messianic Jews. He was born on the Feast of Trumpets. He was born 2 weeks earlier on the Feast of Trumpets, and thus he fulfilled all 7 trumpet blasts for the 7 months of feasts, as we see in Joshua 6:4 through 16. You see, the house of Israel sounded 7 trumpets blasts on the Sabbath, and when they did, the walls of Jericho came down. Messiah did the same thing. On the 7th day of the week, he resurrected from the dead. The stones, just like the walls of Jericho came down, the stones to the temple were rent in two. It says in Matthew's gospel, Matthew 27, it says that there was an earthquake and the stones were rent. So at his second coming, our Messiah has yet to fulfill 7 more trumpets from Revelation 8:2 through 6 for 7 months of feast, just like Jacob, and his son Yahusef, Joseph, who fulfilled 2 periods of 7 years. So Yahushua has already fulfilled 7 trumpets for 7 months of feasts at his first coming, and he will fulfill 7 more trumpets for 7 months of feasts again at his second coming. For who? The kingdom of Judah, because they haven't accepted him yet. So when they come to him on the Mount of Olives on that day, and it says in Zechariah 12:10, they shall look upon me whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him as one mourns for his only son. They're going to be restored back to him, the ones that didn't take the mark of the beast, the ones that did not allow their DNA to be contaminated. Okay, let's talk about Benjamin, son of the right hand. Okay, so just before Rachel was about to die, giving birth to Benjamin, she named him, like I said, Ben-Noni, which means son of my sorrow. But Jacob changed his name to Benjamin, son of the right hand. Little did Jacob realize that this name was a prophetic utterance, for it would later on be through Benjamin that the entire family would be reunited in Egypt with Joseph. You see, it was because of Benjamin that Joseph sent his brothers back to get Benjamin. And he said, "You will not see me until Benjamin is with you." You see, I believe Rachel repented before she died. She probably realized her sin of hiding those idols, which caused her to come under the curse of Jacob's words. This would explain why she named her baby boy son of my sorrow. It is because Benjamin was used to make the rest of the brothers, especially Judah, sorry for what they did to Joseph. Jacob uttered a curse, and I'm sure he would later regret it, for it caused the death of his beloved Rachel. Jacob spoke those words to his father-in-law Laban in Genesis 31:32. He said, "With whomsoever you find your gods, let him not live. Before our brethren, discern you what is yours with me, and take it to you." For Jacob knew not that Rachel had stolen them. This reminds me of when our Messiah also spoke a curse to that fig tree in Matthew 11:13 through 21, symbolic of Israel. He said to the fig tree, "I command you to bear no more fruit." He's speaking to the kingdom of Judah at that time, because he knew that 40 years later, the Romans were going to come in and destroy everything, and the kingdom of Judah was going to be dissolved at that time. Okay, but he knew that he would also bring them back to their own land in the end of days, and it did happen in 1948. But there is also prophetic correlation between Jacob's curse, which caused Rachel to die, giving birth to Benjamin, and Joseph tricking his brothers by hiding a silver cup in the sack of Benjamin. So you'll notice the similarity in the language of Genesis 31:32 and Genesis 44:9. In both passages, somebody is being cursed with death for having stolen something. Rachel, who typifies the kingdom of Judah, stole her father's idols and then lied about having them. Benjamin, who was innocent and had not stolen the silver cup of Joseph, but he was falsely accused of taking it. Joseph knew that by scaring them into thinking they were going to lose Benjamin, that they would finally admit their sinful actions towards their brother Joseph. You see, Benjamin was being used to make the others, whom Judah was in charge of, sorry for their sins. Genesis 44, 9 and 12, it says, with whomsoever of your servants it be found, both let him die, and we also will be my Lord's bondsmen, slaves. So they're saying this to Joseph. They're saying, with whomever you find the stolen cup, let him die, and we will be your slaves. And he searched and began at the eldest and left at the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. This struck them with fear because they promised their father Jacob that nothing bad was going to happen to Benjamin. And now their worst fear is being realized. They are scared out of their minds. They know we are in deep trouble. Our father is going to be he's going to be wrecked over this. Okay, so the silver cup is indicative of a soon coming Jubilee year, when our Messiah shall return. For it is in a Jubilee year that the high priests were commanded to sound 2 silver trumpets for both houses of Israel. What is the prophetic significance of Rachel dying while bearing Benjamin? Rachel symbolizes the kingdom of Judah, as they gave birth to the Messiah, whom they unknowingly killed. They didn't realize they were killing their own Messiah. And this resulted in their own kingdom dying in 70 AD during the Roman siege. Just as Jacob spoke those word curses over Rachel, so did our Messiah speak death to Jerusalem and the fig tree. And how is Benjamin the key to restoring Joseph back to his wayward brothers? Well, I believe that Benjamin was unwittingly being used to reverse the curses. In other words, he was being used to reverse the curse that was brought onto the family because of Joseph's jealous brothers and Rachel's idols. See, Benjamin was the youngest son of Jacob's. He was the youngest of Jacob's sons, and his tribe, the tribe of Benjamin, was the smallest of the 12 tribes. This speaks to the idea that the last shall be first and the first shall be last. Benjamin was the youngest, but yet he became great through humility. In Matthew 18:4, our Messiah taught us how to become the greatest in the kingdom. He said, whosoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child, the same is great in the kingdom of heaven. As I have previously pointed out, Rachel symbolizes the kingdom of Judah because her body was buried in Ephrat, in other words, Bethlehem, Judah. Therefore, Rachel typifies the Jewish people living in the land of Israel in these last days. The 2 southern tribes of the kingdom of Judah include the tribe of Benjamin. So Benjamin and Judah have been together ever since the 2 kingdoms split after King Solomon died. I believe it is because Judah made a promise to his father Jacob when they were getting ready to take Benjamin to Egypt. And this is what he said, Genesis 43:9. Bereshit, Genesis 43:9. I will be surety for him. Of my hand shall you require him. If I bring him not unto you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. So Judah was now accepting the blame for what happened to Joseph. You see, Judah was sorry for what he did to Joseph, for he was now willing to take the blame should anything happen to Benjamin. This is why Benjamin and Judah became intrinsically part of the southern kingdom. The same sorrow that Joseph's brothers felt as they wept over him is the same sorrow that the house of Judah will experience when they finally see the one whom they have pierced at the Mount of Olives in Zechariah 12:10. You see, there are two famous people in Scripture from the tribe of Benjamin that were instrumental in bringing deliverance to the house of Judah and the house of Israel. Who are these two people? Queen Esther and the apostle Shaul, Paul. Benjamin is the tribe that will be instrumental in bringing the lost sheep back to their Messiah, just as Benjamin was instrumental in causing his brothers to reconcile with Joseph. Okay, now I have two blogs. One of them is called How Does Purim Point to Messiah? And the 13th apostle sent to the 13th tribe. And that's about the apostle Shaul or Paul. Okay, in the same way that Benjamin was used to bring the 10 wayward brothers to Joseph, so the tribe of Benjamin will be used to bring the lost sheep to their Messiah in the end of days. And I believe this metaphor is showing us that the inspired letters of Shaul or Paul are the instrument that brings them back. Additionally, the meaning of this name, Benjamin, is son of the right hand. This is a picture of Messiah who is now seated at the right hand of power in heaven. Yehusef, Joseph, is a prophetic picture of Messiah at his first coming as he portrayed the suffering servant. But what if Benjamin is a prophetic picture of those who belong to Messiah? What if the 144,000 are like Benjamin? Once they are resurrected, they become one new man. Could it be that the followers of Messiah are like Benjamin when they preach the good news of Messiah to the lost sheep? Do you remember the famous words of our Messiah in Matthew, Yahu 23:39? He says, "For I say unto you, you shall not see me henceforth till you say, Blessed is he that comes in the name of Yahuwah." Now, these words sound eerily familiar to what Joseph said to his estranged brothers before they went back to get Benjamin. In Bereshit 43:3, and Yehuda spoke unto him, saying, The man did solemnly protest unto us, saying, You shall not see my face, except your brother be with you. And then he said it again to his father Jacob. He says, But if you will not send him, meaning Benjamin, we will not go down. For the man said, You shall not see my face, except your brother be with you. You see this familiarity in the words? Messiah said, You shall not see me. Joseph said, You shall not see my face. Okay? And unless Benjamin is with you. You see, Benjamin is the key to bringing the lost brothers back to the Messiah. Just like Benjamin was the key to bringing the lost brothers back to Joseph. Joseph being a prophetic type of Messiah. In the same way that Joseph warned his brothers that they would not see his face unless they brought Benjamin with them, our Messiah made a similar statement, declaring that the kingdom of Judah would not see him again until they recognize him as the Mashiach. Joseph's brothers did not recognize him until he told them his true Hebrew name. He said, I am Yahusef. Now, what's interesting is that there's only one place in the entire Bible where Joseph's full name is mentioned. It's in the book of Psalms. Okay? The rest of the times, the lying pen of the scribes removed the father's name from the son's name, and they just call him Yosef. Yosef. Okay? They took the father's name, Yahu, out. They removed his name, the father's name, from the son's name. What did it say in Jeremiah 8:8? He talked about the lying pen of the scribes, how they removed the father's name. You see, because the Jewish people in the captivity of Babylon decided they didn't want people to pronounce the father's name because the Babylonians were abusing the sacred name of the father. They were forcing the Jewish people to sign their names on contracts with the father's name next to it. So they said, that's not right. They're taking his name in vain. The Gentiles should not know his name. So they decided it wasn't right for people to know the Father's name. They were wrong to do that. They might have thought they had righteous reasons for putting a ban on the divine name, but it wasn't up to them to do that. And they did it anyway. So up until the point where Joseph's brothers did not recognize him, they only knew him as Zephnath-Paneah. Well, that name, Zephnath-Paneah, has a double meaning. You see, in Egyptian, Zephnath-Paneah means savior. And wasn't Joseph a savior to Egypt? Did he not save them from a 7-year famine? However, in Hebrew, this name, Zephnath-Paneah, means a revealer of a secret. You see, up until that point, they didn't know it was Joseph they were talking to. They only knew him as Zephnath-Paneah. But what he did was he revealed the Father's name within the Son's name. And when he did that, their eyes were open. This is why it is so important that we call our Messiah Yahushua, okay? Because it's when we say the Father's name within the Son's name that the eyes of the lost sheep will be opened. Okay? I know that people got saved using the name Jesus when they didn't know any better. I'm not teaching legalism. I know that when people call him Yeshua, the truncated form, he still knows who they're talking about. I'm not being legalistic here. I'm saying there's a prophetic reason why we should be calling him Yahushua. Because when we reveal the Father's name within the Son's name, their eyes will be opened and they will recognize him. And this is why I call him Yahushua, because we are declaring the Father's name within the Son's name. See, our Messiah's hidden identity will be known to those lost sheep, just as Joseph revealed his true name to his lost brothers. But none of this would have been possible unless they brought Benjamin with them. And this means that the kingdom of Judah must finally accept the Messianic believers who are the sons of the right hand of power. You see, the Messianic Jews that are in the land of Israel right now, they are in the modern state of Israel. There are 50,000 of them. They are the sons of the right hand of power. So this is so extremely important that when the kingdom of Judah accepts the lost sheep, when they accept the sons of the right hand of power, which are a picture of Benjamin, that they too will be saved. Okay? Now, a double portion of sevens cut in half. As I previously stated, Joseph was the first one in Scripture to inherit a double portion of all that his father Jacob or Jacob had. This double portion inheritance is borne out in the fact that Yahuwah has promised to restore everything that has been stolen from his covenant people, his bride. He tells us that instead of confusion and shame, we shall inherit a double portion. Yeshayahu, Isaiah 61:6, but you shall be named priests of Yahuwah. Men shall call you the ministers of our Elohim. You shall eat the riches of the Gentiles, and in their glory shall you boast yourselves. Okay? In Yeshayahu, Isaiah 61:7, for your shame you shall have double, and for confusion they shall rejoice in their portion. Therefore, in their land they shall possess the double. Everlasting joy shall be unto them. So back in 2004, I questioned Yahuwah and asked him, why did Jacob and Joseph both work 2 periods of 7 years back to back, and yet our Messiah only worked for 3.5 years? I was stunned by his answer. He answered my question with another question. Why did King Solomon almost cut that baby boy in half? It was that question that opened my understanding. I realized that this is precisely why the 2 7-year periods back to back for both brides of Jacob Both houses of Israel have been shortened or cut in half. See, our Messiah's ministry was only 3.5 years, followed by a 2,000-year gap in history, the fullness of the Gentiles, followed by the ministry of the two witnesses who will pick up where Messiah left off, finishing the 3.5 years, or the 1,260 days. To learn more about why these two periods of 7 years were cut in half, I recommend these blogs, Who Confirms the Covenant of Daniel's 70th Week, Except Those Days Should Be Shortened, The Duration of Messiah's Earthly Ministry Revealed in Daniel. Okay, now we see here a picture of Solomon, and he's trying to settle the dispute between these two harlots. The one harlot accidentally smothered her baby to death in the middle of the night. Then she stole the living child of the other harlot. They were both living under the same roof. She stole the living baby from the other harlot and tried to pass it off as her own. Okay, and see, this represents the kingdom of Judah. They accidentally killed their own Messiah. They didn't realize they were killing their own Messiah, but that's what they did. Okay, and right here you see Solomon is threatening to slice the baby in half with a sword. The sword obviously represents the sword of the Spirit, right? Because the word of Elohim is likened unto a sword. We are told that his word is like a double-edged sword, dividing bone from marrow. Okay? A double portion of cows with the number 7. You see, on September the 20th, 2014, just 5 days before the Feast of Trumpets, 2 baby calves were born with a visible number 7 on their face. However, the announcement came in the news about these 2 baby cows precisely on September 25th, 2014, which happened to fall on the Jewish Rosh Hashanah, a.k.a. the Feast of Trumpets, Yom Teruah. See, interestingly, one of the baby cows was given the name Baby Ben. Now, the farmers who named this cow Baby Ben named it after the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback Ben Roethlisberger. The farmers that named this baby cow Ben may have been doing it for the football player, but Yahuwah had other things in mind. What I believe he was showing us is that in 2014, that there was only going to be 14 more years left until the second coming, and that he was marking these 2 cows with 7 to show us there's only 2 more sabbatical years left. There's only 2 more Shemitas that would take us to the second coming of Messiah. Do you remember what happened after the 7-year famine in Egypt? Joseph's brothers were restored back to him, and the rest of the family was provided for. Okay? So it was after the 7 years of famine that they came to buy the grain. Okay? And it's the same scenario that will take place when our Messiah returns to the Mount of Olives. The lost sheep of the house of Israel will finally meet him there, as they will look upon him whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him as one mourns for his only son. The name Ben means son in Hebrew. And Yahuwah is getting his firstborn son, Israel, ready for his soon return. In 2014, why were there 2 cows with the number 7 in plain view upon their heads? Well, here it is, everybody. These are the 2 cows that were born in 2014 with the number 7 on their foreheads. I mean, that is astounding. And the timing of it was right at the time of the Feast of Trumpets. Okay? You see, everything about Joseph's life was doubled. He had 2 dreams as a teenager, for which his brothers became jealous and angry with him. When he was in Egypt, he interpreted 2 dreams for the cupbearer and the baker. He finally interpreted 2 of Pharaoh's dreams, which caused him to be promoted to second in command to Pharaoh himself. He ruled over the grain in Egypt through 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine, hence 2 periods of 7 years back to back. Joseph was given an Egyptian wife, by whom he bore 2 sons. Finally, Joseph was given a double portion inheritance from his father Jacob, Genesis 48:22. Pharaoh saw in his dream 2 sets of 7 cows representing 14 years. Since 2014, we have seen 2 cows announced in the news on the Feast of Trumpets, each with the number 7. And as of August 6, 2021, I added an addendum to this blog because we are now hearing reports that a worldwide famine is coming in September, right around the Feast of Trumpets. So the famine is scheduled to begin right around the Feast of Trumpets this year. Well, this coming year. I believe the message being shown to us in 2014 is that there are only 2 sabbatical years left. In other words, 14 years until the second coming of Messiah, which takes us to 2028. And I have a few links here about these 2 baby cows with the number 7. As of August 6, 2021, I added this addendum to the blog because we are hearing reports that this worldwide famine is coming. And the Jewish people call the feast Rosh Hashanah. Why do they call it Rosh Hashanah? Well, there's 2 New Years, and that's for another teaching. But prior to Israel being taken out of Egypt, the linear year started in the 7th month of Tishri. So the 7th month of Tishri used to be the first month of the year. It was called the head of the year. But then later on, Yahuwah instituted another new year, a spiritual new year, that marked the beginning of our redemption. So the linear year is counted in the 7th month of Tishri, but the spiritual new year, the season of our redemption is in the spring. So you see, the global elite are deliberately causing shortages because they want to depopulate the world, and they want every person on earth to receive the mark of the beast. Since 2014, we have had 7 years of plenty, but this coming fall in 2021, we are going to begin having 7 years of famine. This famine will lead right up to the 80th Jubilee, which I believe could possibly be when our Messiah returns. Now, I have another blog called 2 Cows with the number 7, reveal the second coming of Messiah. Okay. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I'm going to just kind of give you some highlights. And then in about 9 minutes, we're going to go to questions and answers. So in Genesis 6:3, we are told that man's days will be 120 years on earth. However, the Hebrew word for years is number 8141, Shana, which can also be translated as jubilees or an age. So the root word for Shana, which is number 8138, means to fold, to duplicate, to double, to repeat. This sounds very much like what happens every 7th year with a sabbatical year. It's called a Shemitah in Hebrew. 7 Shemitahs equal 49 years, and that takes us to the 50th year, which is a Jubilee cycle. A Jubilee cycle takes place once every 50 years, according to Leviticus 25. So when you take 120 times 50, that's 6,000 years. Okay? And you can see these links, Biblical Jubilee chronology. When is the next Biblical Jubilee? So there are varying theories as to when the final Jubilee will arrive. And I have looked at many of these teachings on this subject over the years. One of those theories purported that Messiah would return in the year 2017, and I never did agree with that one. I know a few well-known Hebrew roots teachers that thought he was coming back in 2017. And believe me, I'm not setting dates here. I'm only postulating, okay? So don't say Maria is a false prophet if 2028 comes and goes and Messiah still hasn't returned, because I'm not prophesying anything. I'm postulating. However, the time period pictured to the left is precisely what Yah has been revealing to me since the year 2001, following the events of 9/11. This theory is based on the writings of the Jewish historian Josephus, who wrote in that 23 BC was the 79th Jubilee in history since the creation account in Genesis. So here Oh, I can't make this bigger. I was trying to make this bigger, but okay. So if you can see this, you see biblical Jubilee chronology, Genesis 6:3. So there's from the creation, there's 2,000 years to the 40th Jubilee when Abraham was born. Noah died. Okay, then there's 500 more years to the 50th Jubilee, which is the Exodus. So the Exodus was the 50th Jubilee. 500 more years takes us to the 60th Jubilee, which is the temple was complete. 500 more years takes us to the 70th Jubilee, which was the decree to restore Jerusalem. That was the Cyrus decree. 500 years later, at the 80th Jubilee, was Messiah's first coming. It's when he began his ministry, was in the 80th Jubilee. When he came to came to declare the acceptable year of Yahuwah, right after his 40-day fast, that was the 80th Jubilee. So you add 2,000 more years. That's 40 more Jubilees. Come to the 120th Jubilee. Okay?
Can I just jump in there and mention that the decree of Cyrus is another example of the riches of the wealth being used?
Right.
Specifically about the temple.
Yeah, and some a little known secret that most people don't realize, King Cyrus was actually the grandson of Queen Esther and King Ahasuerus. So Cyrus was part Jewish.
Interesting.
Yeah. But he was also, he also followed heathen practices too. But the reason why Cyrus had such an affinity towards the Jews is because his grandmother was Queen Esther. Okay? But, still he followed the Zoroastrian religion, he was into paganism. Okay? And people are saying that Trump is like a King Cyrus. Well, King Cyrus was a heathen, just like Trump's a heathen. I mean, he's a Freemason. And just because Trump has Jewish heritage, because a lot of people don't know this, but Trump does have Jewish heritage. I mean, he claims to be from the tribe of Judah, and his family are supposed to be Merovingians. But, I'm not so sure that they're genuine Jews. They're probably the ones like the Zionists, of course, like that our Messiah said, I know them that say they are Jews, but they are of the synagogue of Satan. So that's what President Trump is. He converted to Judaism in 2017. Few people know about that. So you see, our Messiah began his ministry in a Jubilee year on Yom Kippur. And in Luke 4:17 through 19, it was called the acceptable year of Yahuwah. That is Jubilee language. According to Josephus, this was likely the 80th Jubilee year since the creation. So our Messiah was born on September the 11th in 3 BC. And you can see my other teaching, when was the real Messiah born and why does it matter? And I take much of my research from Ernest L. Martin's book, The Star That Astonished the World. So I highly recommend going to that blog and reviewing it. He had to be 30 years old by the time he began his ministry. According to the Torah, a man must be 30 years of age before he can enter the office of a high priest. He began his ministry at the age of 30 in 28 AD on Yom Kippur. Now, understand something. It was Pope Gregory who changed all previous dates by moving all Gregorian dates 1 year forward. So right after Pope Gregory changed the calendar, which we now call the Gregorian calendar, there was a few years where they had something called double dating. Double dating meant that in textbooks they would say like 27/28 AD. So what is now considered 28 AD would have been considered 27 AD in textbooks. So the Romans, really messed up the calendar. So I believe Messiah could have began his ministry in 27 AD, but in today's Gregorian reckoning, it looks like 28 AD. That makes any sense. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so let's just say our Messiah was born in 3 BC. I mean, even Dr. Ernest L. Martin, who wrote the book, The Star That Astonished the World, he says he was born in 4 BC/3 BC. So he does the double dating. He says 4/3 BC. Why? Because Ernest L. Martin was familiar with Pope Gregory's, corruption of the calendar. So what we now deem as 3 BC was probably 4 BC at that time. Just like he was 30 years old in 27/28. Okay. So if we add 3 years to a negative 3 years, right? Because if he was born in 3 BC, that's a negative 3 years. So add 3 years to minus 3 years and you come to 0. But there's no such thing as year 0. So we skip year 0 and go straight to 1 AD. Therefore, in 1 AD, he was 3 years old. So we start counting Yom Teruah 3 BC. Okay. He was 0, newborn. Okay. Yom Teruah 2 BC. What? Oh, you know what? Did I mess something up? I did. Oh my goodness. I just noticed this typo that I made. So Yom Teruah. Oh, no, I didn't. Never mind. It's because when you're doing negative years, it can be confusing. Okay, never mind. Yom Teruah 2 BC, he was 1 year old. Yom Teruah 1 BC, he was 2 years old. Okay. Now we skip year 0. We come to Yom Teruah 1 AD, and he's 3 years old. So I go all the way down the line, and I go to Yom Teruah 28 AD, and he's 30 years old. This is when he would have began his ministry. Now, as I said, prior to Pope Gregory making the changes to the Gregorian calendar, it would have been considered 27 AD, just like his birth would have been considered 4 BC instead of 3 BC. But because of the papal beast that changes the times and the seasons, according to Daniel 7:23 through 25, our calendar is messed up. Okay, but we can still get a very close reckoning based on understanding where these corruptions took place. By adding 2,000 years or 40 jubilees from when our Messiah began his ministry, we come to the year 2028 on Yom Kippur, which will probably fall on around September the 30th or October 1st, depending on the new moon sighting at that time. Now, like I said, I'm not prophesying nor am I setting any dates. I'm only speculating based on the data that has been presented to me. If Yom Kippur in 2028 arrives and the Messiah has not returned, I will chalk it up to the wrong data. Okay, I'm not prophesying anything. I'm speculating. I'm writing this blog on August 2nd, 2021. Therefore, we may only have 7 years left if these calculations are correct. Okay, as a type and shadow of the red heifer, which comes from Numbers 19, our Messiah had to be at least 3 years old in order to cleanse the temple and the altar. See, that year when they crucified him, they shouted, "Crucify him." The whole nation became guilty of innocent blood. And what did they have to do when the whole nation became guilty of innocent blood? The high priest would take a heifer, a spotless heifer, outside the city limits of Jerusalem, outside the camp, and they would kill the heifer, and they would burn the ashes of the heifer. They would collect the ashes into a brand new container that had never been used. Well, Joseph of Arimathea donated his tomb, and his tomb was a brand new tomb that never a dead body had been laid in. So Joseph of Arimathea's tomb was like the brand new container, because it says in the Torah that the ashes of the red heifer have to be collected into a brand new container. So our Messiah's body was placed into a brand new tomb that had never been used. So he was portraying the pattern of the red heifer, because you see, when they shouted, "Crucify him," that morning that he was crucified, the whole nation disqualified themselves. Their altar and their temple was defiled with innocent blood. But when he became the red heifer, what he did was he sanctified the altar, and that year their Passover lamb was acceptable. even though they may not have recognized it. He made their Passover lamb sacrifice acceptable by becoming the red heifer. People need to understand this. Okay. So, the high priest Caiaphas, although he was an Edomite and he was an impostor, he prophesied in John 11:51 that Yahushua would be sacrificed for the people exactly 1 year earlier on Passover 31, the Common Era. Now, some people might say, well, how could he prophesy anything if he was an impostor? Well, Yahuwah still honored the office of the high priest, even though he didn't honor the man himself. He still honored the office for which he was holding. Okay. So as the high priest, he prophesied right here, Shemot 12:5 says, your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats. So you see, Caiaphas prophesied the previous Passover that Messiah Yahushua would be killed for the nation. Okay, so he prophesied this, so that's how he fulfilled the 1 year old male, the 1 year old male sheep. Okay, but he also fulfilled the pattern of the red heifer, and so the red heifer had to be 3.5 years, because even though this in Numbers 19 it says 3 years old, in the Mishnah, in the Talmud, they say 3.5 years old in the Talmud because they wanted to be sure that that the red heifer was 3 years exactly, and that there was no miscalculation. So to be on the safe side, they said 3.5 years. Well, Yahushua, although he came to the kingdom of Judah, he came through the kingdom of Judah, he even fulfilled their Talmudic tradition of the red heifer being 3.5 years old. So if these calculations are correct, his death, which took place on the fourth day of the week, what we call Wednesday, April 13th, which would have been the 14th of Abib in 32, the Common Era. Okay. And here there's a PDF that you can download, Passover 32 AD. Okay. So if you go to this PDF file, it shows you the calculations for his crucifixion. So this PDF may or may not take into account the 10-day adjustment by Pope Gregory in 1752, which caused all previous dates to be moved back by 1 year. So I'm not sure if the PDF takes that into account or not. Okay. So I have to say this. Like, I've always liked Jonathan Cahn, thought he was presented a lot of intriguing prophetic things. Admittedly,
that makes one of us.
I became suspicious of him when I heard him teach that we can celebrate Christmas and Hanukkah together, mixing the paganism of Rome with the dedication of the temple of Yahuwah. Okay. However, since 2020, I became more suspicious of Rabbi Jonathan when I heard him refer to President Trump as Messiah ben Joseph. Since that time, I began to smell a rat and started seeing some serious issues with his teaching on the Jubilee cycles and President Trump. You see, the title Messiah ben Joseph is a prophetic title that is reserved for the real Messiah, Yahushua, at his first coming, because he portrayed the role of the suffering servant. To give that title to Trump is blasphemy. Okay? So at his second coming, Yahushua will portray the role of Messiah ben David, the conquering, reigning king. Therefore, to refer to President Trump as Messiah ben Joseph is to place him in the same position as our Savior and our King, which is blasphemy. Okay, now, this is a meme that I made. It says Freemason hand signs, Jonathan Cahn. I mean, he does this thing with his hand on the chin in a lot of his poses. And I didn't realize this until like last year, but apparently this is a Freemason. The guy that used to play, what's that TV show, Seinfeld? Who's this guy? Kramer, yeah.
Cosmo Kramer.
He's a Scottish Rite Freemason, and he's doing the hand on the chin. David Wilcock doing the hand on the chin. So Sir Francis Dashwood, hand on the chin. Paul Revere, hand on the chin. Apparently, this is some Freemason signal. Okay, 7 reasons to be suspicious. He wears only black all the time. I mean, not only the black suit, but the black shirt, the black tie. And I know that some people say, oh, that's just a rabbinical tradition. Yeah, but you know what? The bride of Messiah is supposed to be dressed in fine linen, clean and white. So if you're part of the bride, why would you dress all black? I mean, I'm sorry. I have a problem with that. Okay, this is a hint he may be part of the Jesuit Zionist agenda. And I've even become more convinced of that as time goes on. He blends Christmas and Hanukkah at his congregation. He quotes from the Zohar and Kabbalah magic. He claims President Trump ushered in a year of Jubilee in 2017. Now, here's the problem. If what he says is true, that President Trump ushered in a Jubilee year in 2017, what does that mean? We got to wait 50 more years to the year 2067 for the Messiah to return. I don't believe we got 50 more years. Do you? I'm sorry. I have a problem with his timing. His reckoning of the Jubilee years is off. And why is that? Well, you see, the Zionists, they started counting the year 1917 with the Balfour Declaration. They started counting that as a Jubilee year. And then you add 50 years to that, you come to 1967. There's a 6-day war where Israel recaptured Jerusalem. And then you add 50 more years to that, and that's when President Trump claimed, Jerusalem as the capital city of Israel, right? So the Jewish people stopped keeping the Jubilee years after they were in exile, and they kind of lost count. They lost track of the Jubilees. So they just invented their own Jubilee cycle based on the Balfour Declaration in 1917, and they assumed, oh, that must be a Jubilee year, okay? But that is not what the record of history tells us. I mean, even with Josephus telling us that the year 23 BC was a Jubilee, we know for certain that if you count 50 years from there, it takes us to when Messiah began his ministry, okay? So I believe, he makes Freemason hand signs in many of his poses. He teaches that we are now entering into a new age of enlightenment, which is a Luciferian concept. This is a teaching he did in 2019, beginning of the new age. He also advocates the satanic Noahide laws. Do you know what that is? Many of you don't know probably, but in a nutshell, the Noahide laws say that if you are a Gentile that believes in Messiah Yahushua, you're not allowed to keep the Sabbath. You're not allowed to keep the feasts of Yahuwah. You are not allowed to pronounce his name because you're just a Gentile. So what they say, which is a lie, is they say that Noah was given 7 out of the 10 commandments, and that he was given 7 commandments out of the 10, and that those Noahide laws are only for the Gentiles. But the other 3 commandments out of the 10 are only for the Jews. That's not biblical at all. Sorry, all 10 commandments are for all 12 tribes. So they say that if you convert to rabbinical Judaism, only then will you be counted as a Jew. That's not what Ruth did. Ruth did not go to a synagogue and convert to rabbinical Judaism. She took hold of her mother-in-law Naomi and said, my people, your people shall be my people. Your Elohim shall be my Elohim. And she crossed over just by simply sojourning with her mother-in-law Naomi back to Bethlehem, Judah. And because she did that, she was grafted into the house of Judah. And that's the only reason she was allowed to marry Boaz, because she was a Moabite. And according to the Torah, no Moabite may enter the congregation of Israel forever. But Ruth crossed over. She became a Yehudi, a Jew, by sojourning with her mother-in-law Naomi back to Bethlehem, Judah. Okay, so we don't need to join rabbinical Judaism in order to be counted as a Jew. The apostle Shaul even said in Romans chapter 2, he is not a Jew who is one outwardly, whose circumcision is in the flesh, but he is a Jew who is one inwardly, whose circumcision is of the heart, and whose praise is not of men, but of Elohim. So this notion that there are 7 Noahide laws for the Gentiles and there's 10 commandments for only the Jews, that's satanic. And it even says in the Jewish Talmud that if any Gentile is caught pronouncing the sacred name of Yahuwah, he shall be worthy of decapitation. It says this in the Jewish Talmud. It says if any Gentile is caught keeping the Sabbath or keeping any of the feasts, he shall be decapitated. Do you see where this is going? Okay, Zionism is not. Zionism is a construct that started with the Jesuits in Rome, and a lot of Jews in Europe, to avoid persecution, decided to join up with the Roman Jesuits. And this is who our Messiah was talking about in Revelation when he says, I know them that say that they are Jews, but they are not. They are of the synagogue of Satan. Now, they might be ethnically Jewish. They might really have the DNA, from the house of Judah. But if they reject the Messiah, and I know that Jonathan Cahn says he believes in Messiah, okay, but does he teach the real Messiah of the Bible, or is he teaching another Yahushua? What did the apostle Shaul or Paul say? He says, if any man comes preaching another Yahushua, or another Jesus, whom we have not preached, let him be cursed. So is he preaching another Yahushua? I tend to think he is, because, why is he promoting a new age of enlightenment? Why does he advocate the satanic Noahide laws? And why did he claim that President Trump ushered in a Jubilee year? That's something that the real Messiah is going to do, not President Trump. President Trump doesn't have the honor of ushering in a Jubilee year. That's for our Messiah to do. Okay. Sorry, Jonathan. Can't agree with you there. Okay. So anyway, I went down that rabbit hole a little bit so you could understand. Now, even though I don't agree with Jonathan Cahn, okay, he does present some, interesting concepts, right? And so right here you have a TV show where Jonathan Cahn appeared on Jim Bakker's show in 2014, and he talked about the 2 baby cows that were born with the number 7 on their faces. So I thought that was very intriguing, and I thought it was great that he brought this out. But his reckoning of the Jubilee cycles is totally wrong. If President Trump ushered in a Jubilee year in 2017, that means we have to wait 50 more years for the real Messiah to come back in the year 2067. And there is no way that is accurate. There's just no way. So I believe, and I derived a different meaning than Jonathan Cahn did, that these 2 cows that were cited in the year 2014, that they were actually telling us that we only have 14 more years left, 2 sabbatical years. So in this video, Jonathan Cahn talks about the two cows that were born with the number 7, and he talks about this on the Jim Bakker show, and it's fascinating, but I would take what he says with a grain of salt. Okay, I wouldn't take everything he says as biblical revelation. It's like he gets a few things right, but then he's off on the rest of it. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being patient and listening to this teaching. And Shabbat Shalom, Shavuot Tov. Have a good week, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
Mm-hmm.
Yahuwah bless you and keep you. Yahuwah make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon you and give you shalom. We hope you've enjoyed today's broadcast and that you are encouraged in your walk with Messiah. For more teachings, subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell to be notified of our latest content. Visit Maria's many blogs at doubleportioninheritance.com. That's doubleportioninheritance.com. This ministry is made possible by the prayers and support of listeners like you. To make a donation by PayPal or Venmo.com, use the email address doubleportioninheritance@gmail.com. That's doubleportioninheritance@gmail.com. On behalf of Maria and Gary at Double Portion Inheritance Ministries, may Yahuwah bless you.